The last lesson we talked about, we learned what a parabola was, and we also were able to identify the vertex and if the vertex was a maximum or minimum. So we're going to review that at the first. And then we're also going to do that same thing, but we're going to do it with a different type of equation, and we're going to learn how to do it on the graphing calculator. So we're going to use the graphing function in our calculators to help us find the vertex, and then we can decide if it's a maximum or minimum. Then we're going to be able to graph a parabola. Given the equation, we're going to be able to graph it just by hand without using the graphing function of our calculator. We're going to learn how to graph the equations of a parabola. So first, let's just review what we did last time to remind us how to find the vertex and knowing if it's opening up or down and if it's a maximum or minimum. So in this equation, so this is review from last time, these two numbers were our vertex. So whatever is in those two spots, that's our vertex, but we always change the sign. So we do the opposite sign here. So do the opposite sign, meaning if it's positive, change it to a negative. If it's negative, change it to a positive. So the vertex is going to be +4, +1. You only change the sign on the 4, the 1 stays the same. This number in front is A, so A is -6. If A is a negative number, the graph points down because down is negative. So if it's a -6, doesn't matter that it's a 6, it just matters that it's negative. You know it's pointing down, which means we have a high point for my vertex. So this is a maximum. So this vertex right here is a maximum. So number 2, same thing. We have our vertex first. These two numbers are our vertex. The inside one, we're going to change the sign. So it's going to be a -2. The 7 stays negative. Whatever it is, it stays the same. The 2 changes, the 7 does not. The number in front, 1/4, is A. So A is 1/4. It does not matter what the number is. All I care about is that it's positive number. 1/4 is positive, which means the parabola is pointing positive. So it's pointing up, which means my vertex is at the bottom, which means I'm going to have a minimum. So remember, the minimum is when it's at the bottom, maximum is when it's at the top. So that was a review from last time. So today, the first thing we're going to be doing is I'm going to give you an equation of a parabola, and you're going to use the graphing calculator, like the function, the graphing function. We're actually going to graph it on our calculator to find the vertex and also be able to tell if it's a maximum or minimum. So this question, if you'll notice the directions, it says use a graphing calculator. When it says use a graphing calculator, that means we're going to use the graphing function on the calculator. We're actually going to graph these equations. You'll notice that this equation does not look the same as what it was on number 1 and number 2. The equation is now in standard form versus in vertex form. If it's in standard form, there is another way to find the vertex, but we're going to do it by using our calculator. So we're going to graph that equation in the calculator. Then we're going to have the calculator find the vertex for us. We don't even have to find it. We just need to know how to do this in the calculator. So as I go through and do this, follow along with me in your calculator. Make sure you're with me on every step. If you're watching this video, you can pause it to where I don't go ahead of you. So make sure you're with me at every single step. In your notes at the back, there is also some directions that teach you the same thing. So if you ever forget, they are in your notes on the back page of your notes. So we're gonna graph that equation. So first thing you're gonna do, open your calculator. And if you'll notice on my screen, whenever I click something, it will turn red. So we're gonna push the Y equals button. It's in the top left corner. It's red on my screen. So push Y equals and this screen should come up. It has Y1, Y2. If there's anything on any of those, hit the clear button. And you can just even scroll down and hit clear on each one of them. Just use your up and down arrows and hit clear if anything's in them. So make sure they're empty. There's nothing in there. Then we're going to enter the equation. So the equation has an x squared first. When we type the x, we're going to use the button that's right below mode. So it's red on my screen right now. It's got an X, a T, and then it has a circle with a line through it and an N. So that is the X button. So if you ever want to do an X, you're going to push that button. It's right below mode, close to the top of your screen. It's red on my screen right now. Then we're going to square that. So push your caret key. Again, it's red on my screen. And then push your 2. Then you have to hit the right arrow to get out of that. And then we're going to keep typing. So the next one is minus 6x plus 10. Minus 6, and then push your X button again, plus 10. So make sure, double check your equation. make sure the equation in your calculator looks just like what's on your paper. So we don't type the y equals, it's already in there. We just start with the x squared minus 6x plus 10. Make sure it's a minus sign, not a negative. So you're pushing the minus that's next to the number 6, not the negative that's at the bottom. So it's x squared minus 6x plus 10. So first thing you do, y equals, type the equation. Then you're going to push the button at the very top. You'll notice at the top, the very top row right below your screen is all the graphing buttons. We're going to push the button that says graph. Okay, if yours does not look like mine, I'm going to show you how to get back to this screen. What we're going to do, and everybody do this just so you know where it's at, just in case your screen ever goes like a weird, it doesn't look like this if it looks weird. Push the zoom button, top middle, push zoom. And if you look down at number 6, it says Z standard. We always want to be in the standard window for what we're doing. So just push number 6, or you can scroll down to 6 and hit enter. Either way, if I push 6, it will get you to the standard window. So always make sure you're in the standard window. So hit zoom and then 6, and that will get you to the standard window. Now this is our graph. So just looking at it, we can tell that it's going to be a minimum. So without even finding our vertex, we know this is a minimum because it's got a low point on our graph. So I'm going to go back to my paper and I'm going to write minimum because I know it's a minimum just by looking at it. Now I need to find my vertex. So this is the part we're going to let our calculator do it because sometimes it's going to be exactly at a specific spot. Sometimes it's not going to be. So we're going to have the calculator find our vertex. So once you've got the graph, we are going to calculate the vertex. At the very top of your screen, you see the button that says trace. Don't push it yet. Right above trace, there's in blue writing, it says calc, C-A-L-C, in blue writing, little blue writing right above trace. That calculate is a way that we're going to calculate the vertex. So since it's in blue writing, push the blue button that says second first. So watch my screen and you'll see that it turns red. So it's blue. So push the second button, then push the trace button. So if you hit second trace, this calculate screen should pull up. If you're not there, pause the video so you can get to that point. Once you get to this calculate screen, we want to calculate either a minimum or a maximum, depending on what the graph looked like. We already wrote down that it is a minimum. So we know it's a minimum. So we're going to calculate a minimum. We're going to go to number 3. If it's a maximum, then you would go to number 4. So we're going to go down to number 3. You can either push the number 3 or you can hit down and hit enter once you get to 3. If it does, so don't touch anything on your screen once you do that. If you don't see the words left bound in the bottom left of your screen, you push the wrong thing and you need to do it again. Go back and hit second calculate, then hit minimum. It has to say left bound in your screen. So what we're doing here is it's going to say 3 things. It's going to say left bound, then it's going to say right bound, then it's going to say guess. So it's going to say left, right, guess. We want the cursor, our blinking dot, to be on the left of our vertex. So you can see where the vertex is down here. If you see my little cursor, there's a vertex down here at the very bottom. So we want this blinking cursor to be anywhere on that left side of the graph. It doesn't matter where. So you can see if I move it around, see how there's that blinking cursor? You have to use your right and left arrows. Do not push up or down. It doesn't work if you push up or down. You have to push right or left. So push the right arrow or left arrow and it moves that cursor around. So you want that blinking cursor to be anywhere on the left side of my graph, anywhere. So I could put it here, I could put it right here or here or here. Any of these spots, as long as it's on the left side somewhere, then I'm going to hit enter. Once I hit enter, you notice it changes at the bottom. It now says right bound. So I need to use my right arrow and keep just pushing the right arrow until the cursor, that blinking cursor, goes on the right side of my graph. So make sure you're on the right side, anywhere on the right side. It can be anywhere. I can be where I'm at. I can go higher. I could go down here lower. As long as it's anywhere on the right, it doesn't matter where. Then I hit enter. Then it says guess on my screen. So then I'm going to make the cursor be as close to my vertex as I can get it, just really close to down to the bottom of that vertex. It's saying guess where the vertex is, so it wants you to get really close to it. Once you're close to it, hit enter, and it will give you the minimum. So if it's 2.9999999 like this, we're going to just round that to 3. and then our y value is going to be 1. So our x is 3, y is 1. That is our vertex. So the first number is 3, second number is 1. So I'm going to go back to my paper, and I'm going to write 3, 1 for my vertex. If you wrote 2.9999, that's okay too. If you want to write the 2.99, that would be just fine, or rounding it to 3, 1. So if you're not sure if you should round or not, and you want to write 2.99, that's okay. And that's it. That's our answer there. Let's try another one. So go down to number 4. So you're going down on your page. So we're going to graph this equation. So we're typing just this part in to the graph. So go back to your calculator. You're going to hit the y equals button again, top left. Hit clear, and it will clear out anything that's in there. Make sure they're all cleared out, so it just looks like this again. Then we're going to type our equation in. So our equation is -2. With the negative, push the negative button down at the bottom, then the 2, and then it's x squared. So push the x button, that's xt, theta is what that 0 is called with the n, right below mode, and then we're going to square it. Then hit your right arrow to get out of that. Then minus, make sure it's minus, not a negative, 16x minus, again, 35. Make sure you're putting minus in front of the 16 and 35. The 2 has a negative in front of it. Then the 16 and the 35 do a minus. So that's our equation. Make sure that equation matches what's on your paper. Then hit the button that says graph. Again, if your screen is weird here, push zoom. You push zoom and go down to number 6, zoom standard, it will put you back to this regular screen. So looking at this graph, I can tell that it is a maximum because the vertex is up here at the high point. So this is a maximum. So I'm going to go back to my paper and I'm going to write maximum. So now I need to figure out the vertex. I know it's a maximum. So to find my vertex, I'm going to go to calculate. Up at the top above trace in blue writing is the calculate again. So we're going to hit the blue button. We're going to hit the button that says second, that's blue. Then push the trace button, and that brings up our calculate menu. This one is a maximum. It's up high, so we're going to do number 4 for maximum. And then it should say left bound. Make sure it says left bound in your screen. This one's a little bit harder to see your cursor. I can't see my cursor right now. If you can't see your cursor, the y value, see how my y is -35? That means my cursor is really far down on my graph. So I want to push my right arrow. I want to push my right or left arrow. I want that y value to get closer and closer to 0. So if I hit the button, see how it's getting, let's see, let's hit this way. So if I see how this, if I'm hitting the right arrow, I'm getting, that number's getting smaller and smaller. It's getting farther from 0. That means I'm going the wrong way. The y value, you want it to get closer to 0. If you're not getting closer to 0, you're pushing the wrong way. If you keep pushing it and it gets closer and closer to 0, eventually you will see your cursor. So now see how my cursor's on my screen, but it says left. Make sure I'm on the left. Right now I'm on the right side, so I need to go over the top and get back down to the right side. Anywhere on the right side. I know I'm on the right side now, so I'm going to hit enter. I'm sorry, the left side. Anywhere on the left side. Now it says right, so I'm going to the right. So first is left, second is right. So now I'm going to go over to the right side. Make sure you just get all the way over the top to the right side, anywhere at all on the right side. It doesn't matter where, as long as it's on the right side, then hit enter. Then it says guess. So I'm going to put my cursor right at the top, as close to that vertex as I can get it. And then I'm going to hit enter. So we have -3.9999 and -3. So -3.99, you could write that or just round that to -4. So this would be -4, -3. And some of your calculators probably actually say -4, -3. Sometimes it does this where it does -3.99, and sometimes it will actually write -4. So if you have a -4 there, that's great. That you didn't do anything wrong. If it says -4, -3, you didn't do anything wrong. You're good. And that's it. That's our answer for that one, and we're done with that one. Let's try number 5. So 5, we're going to graph this equation. So we're going to go to our graphing calculator. We're going to start with pushing y equals, clear everything that's in there, and then let's type our equation in. So we have 5x squared, and hit your right arrow to get out of the exponent, minus 40x plus 78. So remember the x is right below mode. So this is what it should look like, 5x squared minus 40x plus 78. So make sure you have that exact same thing in your screen. Once you have it, you're going to hit the graph button. Again, if your graph looks weird, if it doesn't look like this, push zoom and go to number 6, zoom standard, number 6. We look at the graph and we can tell it's got a low point, so it is a minimum. So I'm going to go back to my paper. I'm going to write minimum. And then I'm going to calculate the vertex. So go to your graph and I'm going to calculate vertex. So calculate is the blue writing right above trace. So I'm going to hit the second button, which says or the second button that's blue, then push the trace button. It brings up my calculate menu. This is our graph that we're doing right now is a minimum. So I'm going to go to number 3. I'm going to push 3 and it says left bound. Again, my cursor's not in the screen. The Y is at 78 on my screen. It might be something different on yours. I want that Y value to get closer and closer to 0. So if I hit one, either the right or left, so if I hit the left arrow, it's making my number get bigger. I want it to get smaller. So I know I'm going the wrong direction if the Y value is getting bigger. I want the Y value to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Eventually, your cursor will be in the screen if the Y value is getting smaller, not bigger. So the Y value needs to be getting smaller. You could even write that in your notes if that helps you to say the Y needs to be getting smaller. So now it says left bound in my screen. If it does not say left bound in your screen and it just has the numbers, you did something wrong. It has to say left bound. So my cursor is on the left side. It doesn't matter where on the left. I could move it to anywhere on the left side. So any of these spots that it's in right now would be great. Then I'm going to hit enter and it changes and it says right bound. So I'm going to take my cursor. I'm going to go to the right side of the graph. Anywhere on the right side, as long as it's on the right side, then I hit enter. Then it says guess. So I'm going to go to the very bottom, as close to my vertex as I can. And then I'm going to hit enter one more time and it will say minimum and have my answer. So mine says 3.999. Yours might already say 4 automatically. So if you get 3.999, you can write 4 or you could write 3.99. Either of them would be fine. So I'm going to say 4, -2 for my minimum. So 4, -2. So that's my minimum. And that's it. We're done with that one. All right, let's do one more graphing in our calculator. So this one, we're going to graph this equation. Go ahead and go to our graph, push y equals, clear anything that's in there, and let's type the equation in. It is a -3. Make sure you push the negative button, then the 3, not the minus, but the negative. Then your x, which is up top underneath mode, to the second power, then your right arrow. Now we have a -18. Make sure you put a -18, and then your x, and another minus, not a negative, but a -22, and hit enter. So there's our equation. Double check, make sure your equation matches what's on your paper. You need to make sure they're the same. Then we push the graph button so we can see our graph. Again, if the graph looks weird, push zoom and go to number 6, which is standard, and it will get you back to this window. So we have a maximum. It's up high. So on my paper, I'm going to write maximum. Then I'm going to go back to my calculator and I'm going to calculate the maximum, calculate the vertex. So calculates above trace. I'm going to hit the second blue button that says second on it, then hit trace. And I want to calculate a maximum. So number 4 is a maximum. It says left bound. Again, I can't see my cursor. I want this Y. The Y right now on my screen says -22. I need this number to be closer to 0. So I'm going to hit my right and left arrow. It's getting closer to 0, so I'm going to keep hitting the left arrow. So there's my cursor, but I need it on the left side. So I want it to go over the top and go to the left side of my graph. It can be anywhere on the left side. It doesn't matter where, anywhere at all. So that's good. It can be there. I can go down a little bit. I can go kind of closer to the top. It just needs to be anywhere on the left side. Then I'm going to hit enter. And now it says right. So I'm going to move my cursor over to the other side. Remember, you're only using right and left arrows. Never push the up or down because they don't work. It's just right and left. The right side of my graph, anywhere on the right. And we're going to hit enter. Then it says guess. So I need to get the cursor as close to the top as I can. Then I'm going to hit enter. And it gives me -2.99, or yours might say -3, which is fine. I'm going to say -3.5 for my answer here. So -3, 5. And there's my answer. Okay, so that is graphing or finding the vertex using the graphing function on your calculator. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be given the equation of a parabola in vertex form, and you're going to graph it by hand. You can still use your calculator to do math. We're just not going to use the calculator for the graphing part of it. We're not going to use the graph button on these next ones. We're going to graph it by hand. We'll use our calculator to help us do adding and subtracting and multiplying, but we're not going to use the calculator to actually graph it. So you have some steps at the top. This is what you're going to do, what we're going to do to graph these. So first of all, we're going to find the vertex, which we've done before. That's what we did on the assignment last time. Then you're going to pick two x values on the right and left of your vertex. And then we're going to plug those x values into the original equation to find the y value. And then we plot the points on the graph and connect the points. So let me just show you what that's going to look like. So the first thing we're going to do is find the vertex. This right here is called what's called an XY table. We just have a table of values. Normally, these numbers right here would not be there. So it would just be completely empty. You'd have no numbers. It would be completely empty. I'm giving you some numbers to use. You could use any numbers though, and I'll show you one with no numbers in just a second. You can use any numbers you want. These are just some numbers I picked, and I'll kind of show you why I picked them, but it really doesn't matter what numbers you pick, okay? So first of all, we're going to find our vertex. The vertex, this is what we were doing last time. It's in vertex form. There's parentheses. So we can find the vertex just by looking at it. We don't need to use the graphing calculator to find that vertex. We have it right there. So we're going to change the sign with the 5. So the x is -5 and the y is -1. So there's my vertex. So if I graph that, -5, 1. This, remember the x moves you to the right or left. The y moves you either up or down. So the 5 is going to move me left and the -1 is down. So I'm going to go left 5 and down 1 and put a dot, left 5 and down 1. So 1 dot for that. This is my vertex. So from there, I'm going to draw my parabola. So I want two values on the right side. So I want to pick two values on this side, and I want to pick two values on this side of my vertex. It doesn't matter what numbers I choose. I want anything on the right, anything on the left. So I can choose any numbers that are above -5 and any numbers that are below -5. It does not matter which numbers. I just chose the ones that are here. So these are the numbers I chose. So -7 and -6 are below it. They're smaller. And then I chose two numbers that were just above it, -4 and -3. Then we're going to take these one at a time. Let's start with the -7. So this number, this -7 is an x value. We're going to take it and put it in this equation where the x is. I'm going to write this exact equation right here. I'm just going to change the x to -7. So off to the side here, I'm going to write that. So I'm going to write y equals, I'm going to just write it exactly, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do, how it, or what it will look like. So I just rewrote the equation. Then I'm going to take the x, I'm going to erase the x, and I'm going to put that -7 in its spot. So you're taking the x out, putting -7 in. So then we're just going to put that in our calculator. Before we do that, let's write this down for each of these. So now I'm going to put the -6 in. So I have y equals 2 times -6 plus 5 squared minus 1. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put in a -4. So y equals 2 times -4 plus 5 squared minus 1. Then I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to put in a -3. So y equals 2 times -3 plus 5 squared minus 1. I do want you to write this so I can see what you're doing. You'll notice this is the only number that changes in each one of these. The rest of the equation stays. That's where the x was of the original equation. I just changed the x value only. Everything else stayed. Now I'm going to take one of these at a time. So I'm going to take this equation right here. I'm going to enter this into my calculator, not the y, but the numbers. I'm not putting it in the graphing part. I'm just doing regular calculator mode. So I'm going to go to my calculator, just hit clear and get back to this main screen. So however you have to get back to your main screen, not the graphing part, just regular math, just regular adding and subtracting. Then we're going to enter this piece that I have highlighted, starting with the 2. So it really is just this right here, starting with the 2. That's what I'm entering. So 2, then parenthesis, -7 plus 5 parentheses squared minus 1. So type that in. So 2 parenthesis, -7 plus 5 squared minus 1. Make sure it's a -1 at the end, not a -1. So if you typed it in right, you should get a 7. That is the answer that we're going to write on our in our table. So I'm going to put a 7 right there. So the -7 goes with 7. So now we're going to move on to the next one. I'm going to take this equation. Oh, I'm going to take it starting at the 2. So this equation right here, I'm going to type it in. So go to your calculator and you're going to type in 2 times -6 plus 5 squared and then minus 1. Type the whole thing in just like that. And you get a 1. So we're going to write a 1 to go with that -6. Now I'm going to go to the next piece. I'm going to do this one. I'm going to type this one in my calculator. So I have 2 times -4 plus 5 squared minus 1. Hit enter. So that's another 1. So I'm going to go back to my paper. I'm going to write a 1. And then my last equation is this one right here. We're going to type that one in our calculator. So I have 2 times -3 plus 5 squared minus 1. So double check to make sure you typed everything correctly. So that gives me a 7. So the last one is going to be a 7. Now I just need to graph these. So I'm going to do these one at a time. So I'm going to graph this one first, -7, 7. So -7 is left, +7 is up. So I'm going to count left 7 and up 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's my first dot. Now I'm going to graph the second one. So I'm going to graph this one, -6, 1. So left 6, up 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then up 1. Okay, now let's graph the next one, -4, 1. I'm going to go left 4, up 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, up 1. And then my last one, -3, 7. I'm going to go left 3, up 7. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's my points. You can see that the points kind of line up. These ones that I have set up for you, they kind of line up nicely like this, but we're going to do one in a second that might not look quite the same as this. So we'll just do I'll show you what I mean. But this one, we know that this bottom piece right here, that's the vertex. So the graph should go up or down from that vertex. Then you're going to just draw the best parabola you can. Make sure it's a U shape. Don't make it pointed. Don't make the bottom a V. It has to be curved. And that's what your parabola is going to look like. If you go to draw it and it's not looking like a parabola, you probably have one of your dots in the wrong place, or maybe your numbers in your table are wrong. So you need to go back and check like these numbers here to see if these numbers that you found, maybe they're wrong, or maybe you have the right numbers. You just graphed it in the wrong place on your graph. So if it doesn't look like a U shape, something's wrong. It will always look like a parabola, a U-shaped graph. So let's do number 8. All right, so first we're going to find the vertex. So the vertex is going to go right here. That's these two numbers. So we're going to write those down. So the 4, we're going to change to a +4, and the 6 stays -6. Then we're going to plug in the X values. So all of these one at a time, we're going to change this X to that number. Everything else stays the same. We're just changing the X. So the first one, I'm going to have Y equals 1/2. And then I'm going to put a 0 where the X goes. So 0 minus 4 squared minus 6. Then I'm going to plug in the 2. So Y equals 1/2 times 2 minus 4 squared minus 6. And I have Y equals 1/2. I'm putting in a 6 now. So 6 minus 4 squared minus 6. And the last one, I'm going to put in an 8. So Y equals 1/2 times 8 minus 4 squared minus 6. So just to make sure you see where I'm getting these numbers, this 0 is here. The 2 is here. I have the 6 goes here. And then again, the 8 is here. So that X value in the original equation, this X right here up at the top, the beginning, is changing to those 4 numbers. Now I need to enter those in my calculator. So this 1/2, let's look at how to do that. Anytime you have a fraction, there's a couple different ways we can do it. For this, I think it's probably easiest just to do as a division, just put it in parentheses. So when you enter the 1/2, you need to do parentheses and 1 divided by 2. So that's how we're going to do 1/2. Anytime you have a fraction, put it in parentheses with a division in between. So parentheses 1 divided by 2. Then do parentheses. Then we're going to put in the 0 minus 4 squared. Then hit your right arrow to get out of that, put -6. So this is that first one. We entered in 0. So the 1/2 at the beginning has to be in parentheses. So make sure you have it typed just like I've got it here. And it's a -4 and a -6, not a negative on either one. You should get 2 if you typed it in correctly. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to type or write down a 2. Then I'm going to type in the next piece. So parentheses, 1 divided by 2, parentheses. Then I have 2 minus 4 in parentheses squared, -6. Again, make sure yours looks just like that with a 1/2 in parentheses at the beginning. And you should get -4 if you typed everything in right. So I'm going to write a -4 there. Then we're going to type in a 6. Then we're going to enter the next one. So we're going to put in 1/2 times 6 minus 4 squared -6. So you should get -4 on that one also. And then we'll enter the last one. So I have 1/2 times 8 minus 4. And then -6. So that one you should be getting a 2. So make sure you have that entered just like this. So that one's a 2. So we're going to graph all of those. So let's do one at a time. So our vertex first, here's your vertex. So you're going to go right 4 down 6. So that's the vertex. Then I'm going to do the next point. So 0, 2. So right and left 0, up 2, and put a dot. Then the next one is 2, -4. Right 2, down 4. And then we have 6, -4. So go right 6, down 4. And then we have 8, 2. Right 8, up 2. And again, you can see that it makes that shape of a parabola. If it doesn't, you've done something wrong. So make sure, go back and check and see where your mistake is, either where your points might be wrong or maybe your numbers in your table are wrong. Make sure it's a U shape, not a V shape, that it's curved at the bottom, and then you'll have your graph. Okay, very last one. This one doesn't have any numbers in our table. So we're going to do this one. This is what it would normally look like. You wouldn't have any numbers and you have to pick them. So first we're going to find our vertex, which is these 2 numbers. So we change the sign of the 5. So it's going to be a +5 and a 3. So let's graph that one first. So we're going to go right 5 and up 3. So this is my vertex. I need to pick X values because I need to pick numbers to go here. I need to pick numbers on the right and on the left of my parabola, or of that vertex. It does not matter which numbers I choose. I can choose any numbers on the right and any numbers on the left. So if I just pick some random numbers on the right, so the vertex is at 5. So if I wanted to pick, let's say I picked 6 and 8 for the right side. And then the left side, let's say I wanted to pick 0. Let's say I wanted to pick 2, 0 and 2. And let's see how that turns out. So let's put those numbers in, and you might have to pick a couple more just depending on what it looks like. So we're going to put these numbers into the equation. So putting in the 6, I have y equals negative, and then 6 minus 5 squared plus 3. And then do the same thing for the rest of those. Okay, and just enter those all in your calculator. So I have, first one was 6. So negative 6 minus 5 squared plus 3. And make sure you have that negative in the front. So that's going to be a positive 2. Then I'm going to enter the 8 in. So I have negative parenthesis 8 minus 5 squared plus 3. So that gives me a negative 6. And then I have negative, my next number is a 0. So 0 minus 5 squared plus 3, which gives me a negative 22. Kind of a big number. That might not be very helpful. Let's do the next one. So we're putting in a 2 next. So we have negative 2 minus 5 squared plus 3. So negative 6 for that one. So let's graph what we can. So the 6, 2, if I go right 6 and then up 2 and then 8, negative 6. So right 8. And then I go down 6. And then 0, negative 22. So 0 and then down 22, it's not going to be on my graph. So I'm not going to graph this one because it's way off my graph. But 2, negative 6 would be on there. So I'm going to go right 2 and down 6. So I'm going to pick another point that would be on my graph so I can kind of see it a little bit more. Let's pick a negative, or let's pick a 4. We're going to plug 4 in just to give me one more point. You can do as many points as you want. The more points you have, the more accurate it will be. So let's plug in 4. So if I put that in my calculator, that actually gives me a 2. So I would go right 4 and up 2. So now I can see my parabola a little bit better, and then I can graph it. You can do any numbers. When you choose these numbers, you can pick any numbers you want. The more numbers you choose, the more accurate it is. Sometimes you're going to pick numbers like this one that is 0, negative 22. That's so far off your graph, you can't even graph it. So you want to get numbers that are kind of close to this X value. The closer they are to the X value, the more likely they are to work. So if you have a 5, you could pick like a 6 and a 7. And then on the other side, a 3 and a 4 might be good because they're really close to 5. You could pick some that are farther away, but it makes it to where sometimes they're just going to be off your graph. And that's how you would graph it. It's looking like that. So in your notes, you do have the steps of how to graph using your calculator. If you forget, you can look at your notes to see what steps and what buttons you push for that.